Welcome to Virtual Meetings with Purpose and Pizzazz. I am so glad that you decided to join us today. I don't know if you've joined us because you've never done virtual meetings, or if you've joined us today because you actually want some tips and techniques that kind of refresh what you're doing and what you know how to do. So as we look at having meetings with Pizzazz, I had to show you this overview from NetSpeed Learning Solutions. This overview visually means to engage their attention. I means to interact with them, and they suggest every 3 minutes. R means that you record decisions and actions, and if you can visually do this, do it visually, because this means that you're using the whiteboards that they have. So T stands for test agreements, and U stands for use all available interaction tools. A stands for amplify your virtual presence, and L means leave the meeting on a high note. So those are the things that we're going to be going over today. This was amazing to me. My neighbor posted this, and the dog's eyes says it all. Day 7 at home, and the dog is looking at me like, see, this is why I chew furniture. Maybe you're to that stage as well. So virtual workers need to connect because they can be lonely, bored, and they definitely need a break. So virtual meetings are critical for you to keep morale up because you're enabling face-to-face contact, you're keeping team members connected together, and you're facilitating an exchange of views. You might be helping them to report on activity or experiences, to coordinate or arrange activities. There's so many reasons why you're having these virtual meetings. And depending on the team and where it is, you may want to have these virtual meetings once a day, once a week at least. But smaller meetings, less time, are definitely better than long, drug-out meetings. You have to choose the right technology. You've got Skype, Zoom, GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting. I've worked on all of those, and they're just a little bit different, each one of them. So get in and try it and see what is best for you. And you want to differentiate between a meeting and a webinar. A webinar is what we're having today, and everyone comes in the webinar as there's no video and no sound on. You can enable that. But when you go to meeting, when you have this meeting with them, all of their videos are on, and you're actually like you're in the same room. So that's the choice that I would make when you have a small team. So you make sure the technology is right. You set up the meeting and you practice with someone. If you don't understand the platform, you need to do that. And then have a practice session and ensure they know how to enter the room and use the video and the microphone. That would be essential for your team members, because our goal is to ban boredom and squash multitasking and build participation. So as I said, you want to have a check of your technology when you have your first meeting there. So turn on your video, have all the participants' videos on, ensure the sound quality is as good as you can, and that your video and your visuals are coming through clear. I want you to become friends with PowerPoint, okay? Because it can give you good visuals. So you enable your meet and greet before the meeting starts, and then you certainly want to enable that chat feature for them. So virtual meetings, we want to have some pizzazz, but we're going to tackle first how you have them with purpose. So why do attendees hate meetings? Well, it's the same with the face-to-face meetings that you have in a conference room. They hate them when there's no clear reason for the meeting, when there's no agenda. The meeting starts late and ends late. Too many topics are crammed into that time frame. The wrong people or too many people are in the meeting, and the discussions wander like the cow trails. Old items are rehashed, and no decisions are reached, and no assignments are made. Now, if that's happening in your one-on meetings and you continue that in your virtual meetings, they're going to hate them even worse. So have you ever had a fine meal in a beautiful restaurant? I'm sure you've had. I'm sure you splurged at some time for a birthday or an anniversary. Did that just happen? No. Think of all the planning it took to build a restaurant and all the planning to put together that delightful menu. Think of all the training of personnel to deliver the meal. A well-facilitated virtual meeting doesn't just happen either. And it takes careful planning, like the what and the why. Those are the first things that you should tackle. And remember that setup of a meeting is about 25% of your time. just getting the agenda ready and all the logistics ready. So I want you to think a little bit like a TV talk show producer, because you're going to need more structure in this environment, in the virtual environment, than you did in your meetings one-on-one or your meetings in the conference room. You need a little more structure. You want to have a dynamic speaker, which is you. You want to have interesting guests, which are your team members. And you have to have this clear agenda to start with, and they need to be prepared when they come. And you want to have supporting visuals that create interaction with them. So we are moving work forward, and different meetings have different approaches and different purposes. So if you're working to just increase teamwork and rapport, or you're just doing a quick agile meeting where you have information sharing or information gathering, those can be probably pretty short meetings. And as I said, you might want to pop in once in the morning to get them started, or every other day. At least once a week is a must. Then you want to do problem solving or decision making. Those are longer meetings, and you might have to have virtual breaks and virtual lunches in them. And the other reasons why you would have longer meetings is to obtain approval or build consensus. That can take some time sometimes. Then you have clarifying responsibility and assignments. That could be a shorter meeting. But planning and strategizing, checking on the progress of a project. So you need to be thinking about what your purpose is, and then putting together how long it's going to take you and putting together that agenda. Have you ever felt this way when you left a meeting, that you were puzzled, confused, lost, unclear, baffled about what really went on? Well, expert virtual managers never let this happen, okay? They never let it happen, because they have an agenda and they have a plan. Now, how many times have we said have an agenda and make sure it's clear? So you want to say, what are the objectives and purposes of this meeting? Then you prioritize the discussion topic so that the number one is up at the top. And then you describe each item on the agenda and explain why it's being discussed so that your team members know. And you want to set some time limits prior to the discussion, because people can wander all over, you know. I mean, you can have a discussion and it go on for 30 minutes if you would let it, but you want people to be concise and succinct. Have you ever had too much to eat on Thanksgiving or Christmas? I'm sure we could all raise our hand and say, yeah, that happened to me, that happened to me. So what you want to do is be clear on how much time you have to tackle these subjects. And so your agenda, if you're going to get through all the agenda, all the to-do items on that, it's not going to work. You have to be clear on your objective. You want to limit the topics to the time frame, and you want to allow time for discussion. So limit how much you have going on in that meeting, because you need 20% more time than you think it will take. And if you rush, it's going to hurt clarity and alignment. So the virtual manager has to think through, in addition to the agenda and how much time it's going to take, that virtual manager has to think through desired outcomes, questions that might be asked, possible disagreements. And I know that your team members never disagree, do they? But the virtual manager who's on top of this meeting has to think through how people are going to disagree and how they're going to respond. Now, have you ever been in a meeting where there are too many voices? This Brady Bunch view here is probably too many voices for what we've been talking about. So if you've been in a meeting with too many voices, you know that the 2 pizza rule is great. This is Elon Musk's rule. Never invite more people to a meeting than what 2 pizzas would feed. Now, you might have to have a virtual lunch and everyone have a pizza, but remember that. Keep it small to be effective. Because if you don't keep it small and you have too many people in your meeting and the content isn't relevant to them, or they have nothing to contribute to what's going on, then this is what's going to be happening. Now, you're not going to see knitting for real, or you might not be able to see it on the screen, and maybe this didn't happen in your meetings, but maybe it did, because you'll hear clacking on the keyboard for sure, and they'll be texting people looking down at their phones. So limit the people to those that are relevant to the topic that you're doing. And you might want to leave them unmuted just to encourage their conversation between them. And this is probably about the right number in a small meeting that we've been talking about, where you're making some quick decisions and building rapport. Start and stop on time, because you reward those who come late and punish those who are on time if you start the meeting late. As I've mentioned, check all your technology and ensure it works before the start time. Then you start the meeting. And with most of those platforms, you can have a meet and greet, and I would highly recommend you do that. You want to welcome the attendees and have an energizer activity if there's time and if the meeting's been set up that way. If it's to build camaraderie, you definitely want that. You establish ground rules, and sometimes you don't need ground rules, but sometimes you do. And then ask them to keep the agenda in front of them. So once you send them the agenda, have them print it out and keep it right in front of them so that they can stay on track as well. And then when you're connecting in this beginning meeting, you might ask them what I call catch-up questions. You ask 2 or 3 people to take a couple of minutes and share their questions, like, tell us what's happening with the complementary project you're working on. Because sometimes, you know, people are working on more than one project, they're working on 2 or 3, and they complement each other. And then what is happening in your community or in your country? Or how's your family? Or how's your pet doing? And the big question is, does your local store have toilet paper? Don't laugh at that, because that was a hot topic in Atlanta. Now you want to assign roles. Have a timekeeper, a decisions list, and an assignment list, okay? Because it's too hard for you to keep track of all of those things in your head. So make sure that someone on your team is assigned to say, you know, we've talked about that for 30 minutes now. So, you know, we need to get off of here in another 10. Shall we move on? Then you have the decisions list where people are documenting, we decided this. Now, why do you do that? Because people don't remember, and they all remember it differently. So have someone make a decision list for you and an assignments list. Make sure that they are clear who's assigned to do what and when the deadline is. And send those out after the meeting. Now, just like in a face-to-face meeting, you can have a parking lot, and it's like the poster boards, okay? So someone is in charge of this parking lot. They're going to be writing down issues where topics are relevant, but they need to be discussed at a later session. Then sometimes you're going to have off-the-wall suggestions, and it's like, what are you bringing that up for? But if you will look at them and talk about it, make them feel heard, put it on the wall over there, put it on that parking lot, in that parking lot on that poster board, then they're going to feel heard. Sometimes you'll have innovative ideas come up and you just don't have time to explore it. So put that on a list as well. Then you have hot topics, these emotional issues that can't be immediately resolved. So they go on a parking lot board as well. Now we've balanced some purpose. Let's look at pizzazz. When you want pizzazz, you want to build teamwork and to make them get to know each other better and more than on a superficial level. So for the pizzazz, pump up your own charisma. If you want to show enthusiasm in your eyes and you want to smile at them and pick up the pace of your speech perhaps and use more inflections in your voice, give that a try and you'll energize them. And you can start with a 5 to 10 minute energizer about some sitcom or what they're watching on Netflix or Hulu or YouTube. One that I like is to guess that favorite movie star. And then once they guess that favorite movie star, then have them tell what they liked about that movie, what their favorite movie is that star did. And if they can remember a favorite line from them, have them say that. It's a lot of fun. But perhaps even more fun is having them send you pictures of themselves when they were little, and then you flash them up and ask, who is that? And you'll get a lot of laughs out of that. Another energizer is finding out what we have in common. You could ask everyone to raise their hand if they, or you can not raise their hand necessarily, but you could also ask them to just turn their video off if they don't have that characteristic. But so they all look around and they say, wow, I love dogs. And then they look and see how many others love dogs. How many love cats, Italian food. You can add anything you want to this, but the purpose of it is that people are finding things that bond them together. They're finding things that say, oh, you've been to New York and love New York pizza? Oh, and you love Chicago pizza? You play the guitar? You hate opera? You've been to Mexico? You never want to go to Europe? I mean, it just brings people together and they can make friends based on what they have in common. Fun activity. Another one I love is to do your favorite t-shirt day and then explain the memory behind these t-shirts. I've got Scooby-Doo there, we've got Star Wars, of course I love New York and Superman, and I don't know what there is, but Marilyn Monroe, you still buy Marilyn Monroe t-shirts. They're just as popular as Michael Jordan. And of course, then you have your sports figures that go around there, and yeah, we're all rolling with my homies. And I'm an Atlanta fan, so I have to have a Chipper Jones shirt up there. Then you run into the people that you've gone to concerts for. And the one I love down here is I'm with this guy until Garth Brooks shows up. So have them share their t-shirts and why they like that t-shirt. Then you can ask team members to prepare a funny anecdote, a song, a joke, a picture. And at the start of the meeting or it transitions to new topics, or as a wrap up, randomly ask these people to share their funny. And that keeps them on their toes as well, because they don't know exactly when you're going to ask them for their funny. And this little boy makes me laugh just looking at him. I don't know what he's reading out of that book. I'm sure he can't read that book, but he's having a great time. Share family pictures. And it's like, I want to laugh today. Share these things. Now, the little girl down there at the bottom with the braids, that happens to be my granddaughter. And they're, of course, they're at home with their homeschooling because of the quarantine. And so they had a crazy hair day. So just have fun with it for just a little bit of the day. Now, we've talked about pizzazz. I want to finish out with a few more purpose things to do. When we come to the purpose, remember that you have so many chats, polls, annotation tools, breakout rooms, emoticons, status icons, video, audio, streaming. There's so many things that you can do to catch their attention, so many tools that you have. Use that chat box to hand out kudos for them. Gerald, thanks for tackling that error in the stats. Haley, thanks for keeping track of those assignments. And Donnie, thanks for those energizing thoughts you gave us today. We're all more positive because of what you shared. Another tip is to use your names frequently. Number one, because people love recognition. And you can use their name when you refer to their comments or suggestions because it keeps them on their toes. It also helps to build community, and it helps participants to zone in and be more attentive. When you say their name, their ears go up. It's like, oh, I'm listening. So use their names frequently. Now, everyone, as we're trying to move work forward, has opinions, and you want them to share it. And here are 3 ways that you can share their opinions. Number 1 is the popcorn technique, meaning that everyone will pop out their ideas. Number 2 is the round robin, which is a little more structured than your popcorn because they can talk over each other when they're doing popcorn. But the round robin means that you're going right around the screen and everyone is giving one suggestion. And then the piggyback method is that you can say, well, Darren, that was a really good idea from the round robin. Let's piggyback on that. Who has ideas that can take that a little deeper, another step? And so those are 3 things that you can do to get their opinions out and get the discussion going. Now remember that in these discussions, you're going to have divergent thinking. In other words, people are going to be far apart probably when you're talking about an issue. Then you have this gray matter here in the center where they're trying to get on the same page and understand each other. And then you get to convergent thinking, and that is the goal, is when everyone's ideas converge together into a solid plan. So you have to bring the divergent thinking to convergent thinking and to build consensus. And that can take quite a bit of time. So you want to organize options and make decisions with them. And you want to say, are we all in agreement or should we move forward? And there's different hand signals that you can use. You can, 5 fingers means I'm all in. 4 fingers mean 3 fingers, not so much. 2 fingers, nah, I'm not really buying into it. 1 finger is like, no, down. So you can also give people high fives in that virtual high fives. You can also have them have actual papers that they hold up that say yes and no, or you can have them do yes and no. So take their temperature, you might say, and find out. And you could also have opinion polls that say, should we move forward, yes or no? And then they can let you know how they feel. Frequently throughout the meeting, you want to stay on track. In other words, you want to stop and say, how are we doing? How's the time coming? Are we capturing the action items? Are we capturing the decisions? What should be tabled and what should be put in the parking lot? So you keep them on track in this manner. Because you know there's always going to be people that are all in, some people that are never, and then you've got some that, sure, if everyone else wants to do it, I'm okay. So your consensus buildings means that you have people who fully agree, partially agree, mostly agree, do not agree, and completely disagree. But what you want to do with the tactics that we've been talking about, which is actually, there's more tactics, but it would take another 30 or 40 minutes, maybe 2 hours. But you have to get them to the point where you say, I can live with that and support it. I can live with that. It's not my first choice. It's not what I would choose, but I can live with that. So once you've gotten to that point, then you can move forward. So now you wrap up the whole meeting and the conversation. You want to make assignments and follow up with them. So you're defining your action steps. You're assigning or asking for volunteers for different tasks. You're making clear assignments. So there's clarity. They don't have any questions in their head. You set a deadline for completion, and then you summarize actions needed. And of course, you send this out afterwards. And then you want to inspire them at the end. So tell me, is this inspiring? I know we can finish this project on time. The past 3 weeks have been the worst in our company. Jeffrey Stickler wants this project finished by the month's end, and we have 3 big blocks to action, and Sarah has a cold, but I know we can finish this project on time. Well, contrast that with this. If the ants can do this, we can finish on time. Now, I love this picture because it looks like the Middle Earth, if you're all into those stories about Lord of the Rings and the Middle Earth, if you're all into that. Or you could use a visual like this. If teamwork can move this apple, we can finish on time. Now, I like to use visuals like this because it captures people's eyes and it brings them in. So that's why I said become really good friends with your PowerPoint. So thank you for attending, and how can I help you in the future? What else would you like to know? You can visit Brondo Power Institute for information on each one of these topics. And if you have other questions, you can send an email to me, Carla with a K, at carlabrandau.com. So Brondo is B-R-A-N-D-A-U. I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for attending.